So can you just tell us how you describe the balance that you strike between being a family man and a college dean? Is it similar to any such balance that exists between one's professional and personal life?
You know, balance is tough. You know, and I think in this field, we preach balance really well to students. You know, you have to have balance, we've got to do your academic piece and then have a personal life, etc. You know, I heard somebody speak 2 years ago at a conference, and she's a faculty member at the University of Maryland, and you know, she put it really well in a way that really resonated with me. And she said, you know, balance is elusive. You know, when you say balance, we're expecting there's going to be a 50-50 balance between what you do in school or what you do in your work life and what you do in your personal life. And the fact of the matter is that there's almost never a 50-50 balance in things you do. And she said what we should be shooting for is not balance, but we should be shooting for lives of satisfying proportions. And I thought that was really, you know, profound to think, I'm not going to have a 50-50 life between work and personal life and hanging out with my wife and traveling or whatever the case may be. But can I have all the things that I want in satisfying proportions? Can I have just enough of the travel? Can I have just enough of the personal life? Can I have just enough of the work? That together, it really makes a full plate that I'm going to enjoy, as opposed to an elusive and sort of mythical balance that says half the time I'm doing this and half the time I'm doing that. The fact is that, you know, your college experience really teaches you that. You guys balance quite a bit as well, and I wouldn't even think that you guys balance less than we do professionally. I say all the time, I think it's often harder to be a student. If I bust my butt today at work, like if I just come in early and like crack down and do everything I do and don't answer the phone, I could maybe go home and not have homework to do. It doesn't matter how hard you guys work today. Because when you go home tonight, you have reading to do for tomorrow, next week. I'm like, you know, that's tough. And I enjoyed school. You know, I really liked it while I was here, but I thought, it's like, that's pretty tough. So when students say, hey, the university I want to meet, I go, I've got some time on Wednesday afternoon, and for those of you who try to meet with me, you know, that schedule gets pretty tight. But student schedules are no easier. You know, a student will say, I can meet between 11:30 and 12 o'clock on Wednesday, and then don't talk to me for the rest of the week until Friday afternoon because I'm swamped. And you're like, all right. So, you know, so it's a tough mix to try to get together sometimes. But, you know, I try to keep that lives of satisfying proportion thing in my head, and I try to use it as a mantra, especially when I feel like I'm doing too much of one thing or too much of another. And I remind myself that you have choices. You know, as much as I may have to do on any given day, there's a point at which my phone rings, and sometimes it's 7 o'clock at night, and my wife goes, hey, what are you doing? And I look around and go, you know, you sort of lose track of that. And so that sort of snaps you back into, I'm going home, I'm having dinner with my wife, I'm going to go watch the Big Bang Theory, and I'm going to but it does sort of snap you back in when real life jumps in and says, hey, go have a life. This will all be here tomorrow.
Thank you. So we understand that throughout your life you've met people, you've learned about other people. We were curious, like, what can you give an example of individuals that have significantly impacted you when you were developing as a student as well as a professional? How and why have these people been so important and inspirational in your academic and professional careers?
So I mentioned Tony already. And Tony was an incredible mentor for me, and I'm still in touch with him to this day. And so it's one of the things that I would say to you, you know, begin to identify those mentors for you, people who you look to, people who know you. You know, that's really important. I think we go throughout our days putting on a series of masks. Who am I as a student? Who am I when I go back to the house? It's not the same person that goes home when I take the bus to New York City or Boston or somewhere, you know, or somewhere else. And so, you know, you're a lot of different people. One of the things that Tony taught me, and you know, I think the other sort of greatest mentor for me was really my father. I was raised by my dad. And one of the things that I really learned from the books that I took away from that is that I try my best to be the same person anywhere that I go. So I'm the same person with students that I am with the people that I supervise. I'm the same person here with you. I'm the same person when I go home to my wife. So for me, there's very little shifting in sort of my core personality, my core beliefs. I'm a fairly laid-back person. I don't go home and change that. I'm a fairly laid-back person. What lots of folks don't know is that I am an incredible introvert. Like, I am a totally introverted person. But I do a very extroverted job, right? And so in your lives, you're going to have to figure that out, and knowing whether you're an introverted person or extroverted, that's important, And being an introverted person doesn't mean that you sit around quiet all the time, you want to be by yourself. Being introverted, the question you have to ask yourself is, where do I get my energy? How do I recharge my batteries? Do I recharge my batteries by being around other people and engaging with folks? Or do I recharge my batteries by doing something sort of smaller, either being with one other person or being by myself? When I go home, I shut the blinds, turn off my phone. I shut out the rest of the world when I go home, and that's like bliss for me. Like, I totally recharge my batteries. My best conversations with students are like one-on-one conversations. Like, we're sort of on our own, doing our thing. I enjoy that, and so that's how I recharge my batteries. Large things drain me. So I go to conferences with, as a Tia will do this year when she goes to NASPA, student affairs folks have huge conferences, 4,000 or 5,000 people. And so when I'm on like a national board or something like that, I go to conferences for 4 days, and I start meetings at 7:30 in the morning, so it doesn't feel very different than coming to work. But everything's very social. So you're in large meetings, and then you go to board meetings, and then you go to big receptions, and then you go to big talks. And by the end of the day, like 3 in the afternoon, anybody who finds me at a conference calls me on a cell phone and they ask me where I'm in my room. Like, I'm on the 16th floor of some hotel, like trying not to talk to anybody, because between 7 and 3, I completely drain my batteries, right? And so I've got to recharge that. But in that sense, I'm really introverted. I love being around people. I love being around you guys. But where I recharge my batteries is really on my own. My very best friend in the world is a complete opposite. We go to the conference, he's looking for me all the time. And I'm like, where are you going? He's like, I'm going to the reception. I'm going to go hang out. I'm going to go recharge my batteries. And we're, he's one of my best friends in the world, but he's completely extroverted. That's important for you to know. It's important for you to figure that out about yourself. Like, where do you get to recharge? Do you get to recharge on your own? Do you get to recharge with other folks? And those are some of the things that I learned. So being the same person everywhere that I am, and I do a lot of work at knowing myself. I feel like I'm a complex person, and we live in a really complex world, and it's hard to remain consistent and committed to a core set of values. My dad was committed to a core set of values. One of them was, my kids will go to college, even though he never even went to high school. And I quit school. So my sophomore year, I sort of said, this isn't working out, and I went home. And my dad said, yeah, it's nice that you're not going to go to school anymore, but my kids go to college. I said, oh. I said, okay, so I told him I want to be a regular person. I want to be a bus driver. I just want to have a regular job, regular life. And so I'm going to get myself on my feet, find my own place, etc. It was like, that's great. I think that's a really wonderful plan. But my kids go to college. I said, okay, so that's not really going to happen with me. He was like, well, you should figure out where you're going to go and what you're going to do. And I was like, well, that's what I said. I'm going to go figure that out and then find out. He's like, no, you can't stay today. You can't stay right now. And my mom is like washing dishes, right? Sort of like, she's not here now. I'm looking at my mother going, he's crazy, right? Like, you need to figure this out. And he was like, so, figure it out, but my kids go to college. But those are my dad's values. He was like, you got an education at all costs. He didn't care what my opinion was. And so, I sort of spent some time hopping around people's couches and slept in the park for a couple of days and said, at school, I have a bed. I have as many meals as I want, at any hour of the day, just like y'all. I have a team to go back to. And they didn't actually ask me to leave. So I put my butt back on the bus, because my father's kids were gone. And went back to Albany and said, all right, let me try to finish this up. But it was one of those moments where I said, my father is committed to particular values. And he is unshaken. He was willing to put his son on the street, which he did, because he has values. And those were his values. And he's like, and my mother said he was unhappy. Never seen my dad cry. She's like, I saw your father cry when he left. But he didn't pick up the phone and say, all right, listen, come back, I'll give you a couple of days. He said, my kids go to college. Now, that is the extreme example. I don't want you to be like that. But it did teach me a lesson about making hard decisions and being committed to sort of who you are all the time. I try to be a little bit more flexible